I cannot hear you, Dave. Huh?
I'm over here.
Huh?
Can't you see me?
Cannot hear you.
Welcome to the Toilet Paper Diaries, Ernesto. I'm still here. I'm still running out of toilet paper. Oh lordy, that was a big one.
So, Dave, we outlived everybody. This is the 75th episode of the Toilet Paper Diaries. This is a very special episode, and that's why we're wearing a tie and, no jackets, just as if we will be in our 75th.
Well, here's the thing, Ernesto. The reason that we're wearing a tie, is because we wanted to emulate what we'd be like if we were 75 years old. And I know that not true for my dad, I've got to be honest, but his generation, slightly older, would sit at home watching TV, wearing a tie, and maybe even wearing a suit. They'd wear a suit, certainly for going out, but they'd sit there like this with maybe a cardigan on and a nice pair of work trousers on and shoes, just relaxing. Whereas you're lucky if I'm wearing anything when I'm at home. Well, not lucky.
I remember my grandfather also wearing his tie and his cardigan, and really very nicely dressed up to be at home. And
Well, if we did that, we wouldn't be talking about the fact we're wearing a hole in the carpet, walking around in our cargo shorts and t-shirts. What we'd be talking about is wearing a hole in our ties, because we're wearing ties all the time. Plus, she probably shouldn't wear a tie too often because it's not particularly nice. I never wear a tie. It's actually constricting me. I hate wearing it now, but I just think we should wear it because 75 years old, 75 episodes. So we got into lockdown and thought we have to do something interesting, and we couldn't think of anything, so we did the Toilet Paper Diaries.
Yeah, exactly. So right now, after every single thing that we have gone, it looks like if it is ages ago. If you think about it, let's just try to go over some of the things that have gone throughout this year and possibly we don't even remember. And this is also one of the things which I thought it would be very nice to cover right now, because it's also, that 2020 is 75 years that the end of World War II happened. It's insane. 75 years.
It makes you wonder as well, because we end up with 75 years after World War II is finished, and the world is now at war with COVID. So we're all kind of united in that, but it doesn't feel like a united front. It feels like we're all in it on our own. I'm not sure whether that's because we're in lockdown or it's because the politicians don't seem to get on with each other.
Yeah, it is a very weird thing. And also, for example, that in June, we heard, it was in May or in June also, we heard that the Olympics were going to be canceled and that they were going to be having them for 2021. Now, I am also having doubts that it's going to go ahead in 2021, to be very honest.
I'm going to be honest with you. There's so many factors involved in getting this right. So you've got to get COVID under control. You've got to get the transport under control. You've got to get the audience under control, unless you plan to do it virtual, in which case what you'd have to do is you'd have, like you do at football matches, with iPads everywhere or big screens that have people buying tickets to show up on the screens around the arena. But you've also got the problems of if you're going to do that, is it going to be policed properly for judging the scores? And also, you're going to end up with the worst records ever for the Olympics, because you can't expect athletes to keep training and going into competitions leading up to the Olympics if there are no sporting events. So there's a very good chance that you and I could be called up to represent England and Mexico respectively, because nobody's going to be very good.
Yeah. And but I would like to watch this video, because actually that will set the tune for this special episode of 75 consecutive episodes that we have had in the Toilet Paper Diary, which is about unity and also about the Olympics. Have a look.
We're all different. We look different. We come from different places and live in different ways. But when we all go through the same struggle, when we all contend with the same fear, when we all face the same challenge, it's undeniable how much stronger we can be together. 1 year from now in Tokyo, Japan, propelled by the glow of a singular flame, prepare for the world to unite once more, inspired by an ancient idea that resounds more powerfully than ever. 1 year from now, prepare for that flame to come alive, fueled by their passion, sustained by their greatness. A simple reminder of what we can achieve together. We may not be the same, but 1 year from now, our connection will feel more powerful than ever. After all, it's our differences that give us strength. A strength propelled by hope, unified by dreams, together as one.
So there we go, the Olympics. And I do hope they go ahead. And I wish for the best to every single athlete involved in it. And I have to say it's a challenge because I remember when I was at school and I had to run, I was a sprinter. And we had 1 year when the teachers went on strike. And that 1 year was enough to stop running for the rest of my life. So I just drove everywhere. But let's change the subject completely. Let's talk about the importance of having a dog, because we've got 2 dogs in our house. And I've got my wife and I've got my daughter. I don't mean them. And so there's 5 of us living together. Now you've got Boris, and you sometimes
Boris, and right now I have a Gunner, which is a foster dog.
Gunther.
No, not Gunther. Gunner.
Okay.
Yeah. We're in Texas, so it had to be about guns.
So is that a spare dog you took in as a stray, or one that you're looking after to get acclimatized?
It's very sad. I mean, it is a dog, and he was run over by a car, and he survived, and they had to operate his leg, and right now he's in a cone, and he can hardly walk. And my wife is, he has already a place in Dogs Heaven because she's really taking care of these dogs. So we also have 2 dogs. And absolutely, I think dogs definitely change the world.
So you got 3 dogs in your, oh, you got 2 dogs.
2 dogs.
Well, you've got 1.5 dogs, but I see the point you're making. Okay, so with that, we've both got a full house of crazy things going on, but it's interesting to see that in the White House, for the last 100 years, every president has gone in with a dog. So you had Obama, you had both Bushes, you had
David.
Clinton, except one.
President Trump doesn't have a dog, but he has some really curious pets. Let's
What?
have a look.
Okay.
Out of control at the White House? No, not just coronavirus. Raccoons. There's an invasion crawling around the media cables on the White House lawn, sniffing at bags of gear.
Is there food in there?
Making a beeline for CNN's Joe Johns in the middle of a live shot.
Get! There he is. Ah! Now, no events on the president's schedule today.
Maybe you think Joe has seen too many movie raccoons.
Does someone need a hug?
You too might lob a footstool just to scare it.
No raccoons were harmed in this exercise.
If this was your second run-in with a raccoon, just the week before as Joe was about to go live.
I felt something on my leg, and the first thing I thought was it was a cameraman from another network. And I looked down, and it's a raccoon that had just grabbed my leg.
Law enforcement is on the hunt, spotlighting them with their flashlights, throwing some sort of sandbag, which the raccoon actually tried to drag away. One ended up in a Secret Service security shack. Dogs have joined the search, even broomsticks have been deployed, but like in the movie The Nut Job,
Not so fast.
The raccoons keep coming.
Is he still there? Can somebody chase him away?
Someone tried to trap them.
They have put some marshmallows.
Some rooted for the raccoons. Cue the raccoon gifts. That White House raccoon even created its own Twitter account, though with raccoon misspelled. Sure.
Oh, there he goes.
Mice have previously invaded the White House, and President Calvin Coolidge's wife had a pet raccoon. But never before have raccoons run amok. In the midst of a pandemic, a White House reporter is often told,
"Please stay safe."
Where's your mommy?
But unlike other White House occupants, at least the raccoons always wear their masks.
Let's get this right. So what we're saying is Donald Trump doesn't keep dogs. He keeps a pack of raccoons in the White House. And they're trained to attack fake media people he doesn't like. That's a stroke of genius.
Yeah,
and the added thing is you can probably catch something. So not only do you get a bite in your leg, you get an injection up the butt at the same time.
That's just absolutely crazy. Hey, so Dave, I watched Batman versus Superman, and this quote from Wonder Woman at the end really caught my attention. So I think actually that will be a perfect leading towards what we're going to be talking in a moment. Have a look.
We have to stand together.
Man made a world where standing together is impossible.
Interesting. Great people on both sides is a truth. Now, the thing about that movie, Batman versus Superman, and I was a massive fan of the original comic that came out, The Dark Knight Returns, that ended up with him coming back years later, about our age, and in a world where Superman had got rid of all the superheroes but himself. So you got Batman, who comes out of the closet, not out of the closet, comes back out of retirement. He was never in a closet. But he should have been dressed like that with the Robin. And yeah.
What's the story with Robin? Well, just don't go there.
Don't go there. There's no need. As we said to Batman, don't go there. So it ends up with Batman coming back out of retirement to take on the world of criminals. And Joker comes out of retirement at the same time. So Batman gets blamed for Joker and Superman gets sent to sort him out. So it ends up this big battle of Batman versus Superman, which is what this movie is kind of based on. And it adds in a couple of extra bits. But one of the things about it, it's fascinating of Batman versus Superman, but you've kind of got this going on right now. You've got a situation where you've got America and many other countries really divided as polar opposites of the same people who are really on the same side. And it feels really strange seeing something like Batman versus Superman, where you know they're going to end up getting back together and being on the same team. And then you've got this situation where America literally is heading into the elections, seemingly split irreparably. And I don't know why. It's just over elections. Why should it be that you got so many things in common with your brothers and sisters, but you take a stand over something like that? It doesn't feel right to me.
America's political system has been hijacked to ensure those with power keep it. If you look at American politics and think everything is fine, this video is not for you. To the rest of us, things seem pretty broken. I mean, our forefathers created a beautiful system and we live in a magical country. How the hell did things get so bad? These days, just 2% of Americans trust that our elections work how they're supposed to. Congress has an approval rating of 20%. Our leaders are locked in partisan warfare and they aren't fixing anything. And we're angry. We're angry at the system, at each other. Our country is getting poorer, sicker, more divided, and our families are paying the price. We don't even talk to each other anymore. America's political system has been hijacked to ensure those with power keep it. And for the rest of us, well, it's not so good. I'm going to show you exactly how today's political system is creating the problem, exactly how we fix it, and how the solution ultimately depends on you. This Venn diagram shows the relationship between an elected official doing what the people want and their likelihood of getting reelected. Ideally, they'd serve the people and have a high likelihood of reelection. But a recent Harvard Business School report by Professor Michael Porter and Catherine Gale showed that the relationship looks more like this. They found virtually no correlation between serving the will of the people and getting reelected. In other words, if our elected leaders do their jobs, they're more likely to lose their jobs. How is that possible? The report blames it on two privately held, gain-seeking organizations, America's two major political parties. In 2019, both major parties publicly threatened to blacklist candidates and contractors who veered from the party lines. They control the money, the debates, the primaries. They even draw their own voting districts. A full 61% of Americans want another option. But any third party or independent who runs is seen as a spoiler. So year after year, we choose between the lesser of two evils, Democrats, Republicans, Republicans, Democrats. In any other environment, a new competitor would swoop in to better serve their constituency. You hate your cable company? Here comes streaming. But the two parties have rigged the system to block competition. But it gets worse. In 86% of House races, we now know which party will win the general election before it even starts. That means all of the competition is in the primaries, where as few as 14% of voters participate. And primary voters tend to be more partisan than those who vote in the general election. So the most partisan candidates win the primary. They're virtually guaranteed to win the general, so you can guess what happens next. Over time, the parties move further and further apart. This graphic shows members of Congress who worked with the other party to pass a law in 1953. The gray lines represent their collaboration. The more lines you see, the more times they crossed party lines to pass a law. This is how it looked in 67. In 81. Look what happened in 1995, and by 2011, it represents where we are today. Hardliners are rewarded, collaboration is vilified. Congress is so gridlocked they can't even pass the most basic laws to improve the lives of everyday Americans. For the first time since the Great Depression, life expectancy in the U.S. is actually going down while it goes up in the rest of the world. We were once ranked top in the world for education. We've fallen to 27th. We can't afford life-saving prescriptions, and medical bills are forcing families into bankruptcy. Almost half of American families can't even afford basic necessities like rent and food. What I want to know is, how do we fix it?
Well, I mean, for me living here in the United States, it really pains me to see what's going on. I mean, every time that I see social media, I have a feeling of people, I mean, they are all Americans. And what seems to happen is that the divide and conquer mentality has already get into them. And right now, it's just everybody's an enemy. I mean, if you don't think like me, you're my enemy. And I just don't think that it should be like that. And, you know, I was thinking something that really got me thinking. The last time that I saw so much togetherness in the United States was in 9/11. Let's just watch this clip to remember that.
Finally, today, 9/11 was one of the worst things that ever happened to America, and those of us who live in the Northeast will always carry special memories of the day. I knew 10 people who died that day or lost close relatives, and my memories are nothing compared to their losses. But I remember how helpless we felt that long morning until we located and knew our younger daughter, who worked in Midtown Manhattan, was safe. As the grandfather of twins, I remember actually feeling physical pain when I learned that 11 twins had lost siblings that day. But I also remember some wonderful things.
God bless us.
Members of Congress gathering on the Capitol steps to sing God Bless America that night. The country and its elected representatives were coming together on 9/11 as we had not come together since World War II. The next day, as I drove to work, there was suddenly no road rage. People honked and smiled and flew the stars and stripes from their radio antennas. Congress passed a $40 billion emergency appropriations bill that day and passed it unanimously. The unity would not last long, but I was there. I saw it happen. 10 years later, I sometimes wonder if we could still come together as we did then. To be honest, sometimes I'm not sure. But I want to believe with all my heart that we could.
Yeah, I remember I was working on the radio at the time, and I just finished my shift, and I got home, and my fiance at the time said, "Have you seen what's on the news?" And I went, "No, not at all." So I got on, and we turned it on, and we're watching live what was happening to the Trade Center buildings. And we couldn't believe it. It felt like the end of the world as we know it. And in many ways it was. The world became a different place on the back end of that. Not just the fact that it ended up with our inability to fly without tons of security and stuff and x-ray machines, which never used to exist at all. But also it seemed to be that the world had decided that it would start some kind of really horrible war against each other that didn't need to be had. I felt in many ways the politicians just jumped on top of it and used it to inflame situations, but there's no doubt there was a problem there that needed addressing at the same time. But it really felt that after the Second World War, when you look back at what went on, because it's now 75 years, we're celebrating 75 and everything, 75 years since D-Day, the war ended, the Second World War ended. And I've got friends from almost every country. In fact, I don't know a country I haven't got friends from. The Germans and the British and the Russians and French and everybody's just friends now. In fact, when you commemorate the end of the world D-Day, you got Germany going along and respecting other countries involved in it and all promising that we will not do this again. However, it feels like it's being forced to happen again, and that really hurts.
Yeah, well, that's exactly my fear. I mean, I am afraid. Very honestly, I am afraid that it doesn't matter what the result is going to be in the election. There might be a civil war that neither one of the sides is.
Don't mention the names. Don't mention the names of anybody.
I'm not mentioning any names, but I'm just saying it's going to be very, very scary that neither one of them can accept defeat. And that there's going to be social revolt, and there's going to be all sorts of things. And all of them are American. I mean, a civil war is just unthinkable. But of course, I mean, all we need to do is we have to create the conscience that, you know, we are all in this together. I mean, we are going through a very difficult time. We are going through unprecedented times with the pandemic. We have seen that after a huge thing like 9/11, everybody came together. We've seen that after the end of the war, I mean, you saw now, I mean, right now you're seeing here on the screen, Germany and also President Macron, and you're seeing Prince Charles and Boris Johnson and everybody taking into consideration, we have gone to so much pain in being separated and thinking differently. Let's just work together. And I really hope that that's going to be what's going to happen as soon as possible if we can actually get everybody to work together, because it's really a shame.
When you're honest about it, we didn't expect to see an election with so many old people involved in it. You've got Trump versus Biden in their 70s, which is a kind of weird and bizarre thing. Not saying that you don't have it still going on at that age. My parents are pushing 80 and they're still around, which is fantastic. But it just seems to be that the longer that we live, the less we seem to understand what the world should truly be about. And it's not that our kids are like that. It's really an us thing. Yeah. Now, one of the things that I found fascinating is the world seems to admire now, obviously, the older actors that we see and the older musicians that we see, because they've got longevity, which I find fascinating. So if we look for some of the guys that were around still, I mean, you got Clint Eastwood, who's what, 90 years old, still making movies, still as scary as he was when he was Dirty Harry, just a little bit slower to get his magnum out.
Well, it sometimes has gone to that. Do you remember that it was also a political thing? I do not know what it was. And he was actually arguing with an empty chair.
Well, some days just are like that. And you got Harrison Ford, who must be pushing that kind of age. Jane Fonda, music, you got to be Robert De Niro, must be about that kind of age. But Paul McCartney and the Rolling Stones, Beatles and the Stones, they must be around about 75 as well.
I think all of them are 75. So, I mean, that's why on this episode, it was important that we actually got into that mood of 75. Yeah, all of them are on their 70s. I mean, just think about it. I think Madonna is already also scratching end of 60s, no?
No, she is about 60, but I mean, she's still fantastic, still utterly bonkers, and still my favorite musician of all time. So I'm not going to argue with that at all. But I tell you what, I went to see the Rolling Stones in concert a couple of years ago. And one of the things I found fascinating about them, apart from the fact that we've got this incredible energy, and they are just a pub band. I mean, I don't care what anyone says. We don't move that much. We just play the tunes, go through it. It's exactly what you see on the tin. But I remember an interview with Keith Richards, and it was put to him, how come you've managed to take drugs all these years? Is it the drugs that have held you together? And he made a really profound statement, which is I won't do it in the voice because I can't go, yeah, man. I can't do it, even I'm British. He said, people offer me drugs all the time, and I say no, because there's no way I would ever take anything from the street. You don't know what's happened to it. He said, all the years that I've been taking stuff, I know exactly where it comes from, and I know it's not filtered or damaged in any way. And that's kind of weird to hear it from an expert who, let's face it, looks like he's about 120 anyway. Yeah. To think he's lasted this long, there's got to be some kind of methodology. But you look at someone like Mick Jagger, who, okay, he still dances like it's wobbling all over the place, but is as fit as a fiddle and still an incredible dancer and singer.
Yeah, well, you remember George Burns. He actually said, I'm going to live 100 years. And exactly, he died about 2 or 3 days after his 100th birthday.
Wow.
He was drinking a scotch and he was smoking 2 or 3 cigars every single day. So the big question is, okay, fine. I mean, we are getting older. Yeah. And right now, I think the technology can actually get us to live a lot older. Right now, I mean, if we possibly think about Generation Alpha has the possibility of live 120, 130 years old. But there's one thing which I think we need to take into consideration. Do you know, and this is, I mean, when I saw this, I thought, oh my God, this is really terrible. The average age from, the living age, it's actually going down instead of actually going up.
So more of us are dying younger than we've ever done before. I heard that the last 3 years, our average age is sinking. And that's true in America. In that some countries it's going up a little bit, but certainly it's America. And the weird thing is, do you know what's caused it? There's 3 things that have caused it. Do you know what they are?
Well, one for them, I believe it's going to be whatever we are eating. That has to be one.
That's true. That's partly true. I mean, what we could do is investigate how the food has changed from the Second World War and how nothing seems to be grown organically and everything seems to be manufactured and full of cornstarch, which ultimately makes us addicted. And that's what you get in fast food and everywhere else. But those are the 3 factors that I read about that are really making the big impact. The 3 factors we're looking at is, first of all, opiates, the amount of prescription drugs that people get easily and can take more of, which all fits into the war on drugs. Too many people with access to those kind of drugs. It is going down slightly, or maybe they're dying faster, but that was the first one. The second one is liver damage, and it's predominantly males drinking too young or having hereditary problems. And the third thing, which is more scary than any of them, is suicide. bringing the average down. Apparently suicides are up 33%. A couple of years ago, that was true. But with a pandemic going on, I can't imagine that number going down anytime soon. And it's going to be a worldwide thing as well. So it's kind of really scary that we should be living longer with nanotechnology and the ability to 3D print limbs and body parts and hearts and stuff like that, that our core central thing is we're just not looking after ourselves properly.
Yeah, and sadly, it's also depression. I mean, it's also depression, fear. There's many things, those negative emotions. I think more than the depression, I think it's the negative emotions. And this is exactly what makes me very uncomfortable with what's going on right now with the world. Because I mean, the last thing we want with all these really trying times that we're living in, that we are living in a divided world, and everybody wants to kill each other. And you go like, why? I mean, in reality, it's you know, this is my assessment on the whole thing. I have the feeling that whatever forces, call it political parties, call it ideologies, whatever you want, whoever is in charge of all of this, it's a lot easier to actually, you know, let them, you know, we set the agenda and let everybody fight for it. Now, if you don't fall into any of those agendas and you say, well, you know, let's make sense out of things are going to improve, and there's not going to be any of these sadness and depression that we're possibly living in.
Well, you know, there's a thing called the Ikigai. It's covered in Malcolm Gladwell's book. I think it was The Outliers. And he looked at, there's a thing called the blue zone, where there's people that live to 100 years old. And there's one in Italy, and there's one in, where do you call it? In Japan, at least. There's a couple around the world where people live routinely to about 100 years old. And there's a couple of factors of what makes these people live long. And studies have been done by scientists. Is it the food? Is it the drink? Is it the lack of smoking? Is it all the, and it's got nothing to do with them. What makes people live longer is a couple of things. First of all, they do what they love. They do what they're very good at. They feel that they have a sense of purpose in the community. It doesn't matter who you are, you have a role, whether it's preparing bread or it's delivering newspapers, you have a valid role, whoever you are. The community cares about you. And because the community cares about you, they all interlock with love. They care for each other. And that's why people live for such a long time. They have a sense of purpose. It's been shown in studies that if you want to live to a longer age, be in a loving relationship with a partner who loves you back.
Yeah.
If you're in a toxic relationship, then you die earlier. But this is like 10 years additional.
Yeah.
If your partner loves you and you love them, and you finish each other's sentences and feed each other with spoons and eventually change each other's diapers, it means that you will just live longer because you have had less stress that would take a lesser person down throughout the whole of your life. So this whole thing about the divide of Batman, Superman, and the challenges that are being thrown at people for this coming election is only going to hurt everybody, because as they get divided, they will just live less.
Yeah. Well, you know, one of those very important learning lessons, and we actually lived it. We know a lot of people which are also into the speaking stage, into the speaking business, or they are doing their, I mean, there's a lot of people that have no clue. They have been really very frustrated with everything that has been happening through the pandemic. For us, doing this show has been a way of
the therapy.
A therapy, absolutely. It's been a therapy. And a lot of people ask us, well, why are you doing this? I mean, well, because of course it's been therapy, and we know that we are helping a lot of people. I mean, every single episode, whether it is a podcast, which by the way, make sure to listen to the podcast, whether it is the show, whether it is the different clips that we're having, we know that we're helping people, and that's very therapeutic for us.
Absolutely, and that's a great thing to talk about with the celebration of 75 episodes. In the time of being together, I mean, the show, there's days when I haven't wanted to do it, there's days when you haven't wanted to do it, but we enjoy chatting. And one of the things about making this show is you and I would chat like this anyway for a couple of hours, a couple of times a week. So why not just record it and thrust it in everyone else's faces, to use the probably wrong term. So what we're doing is just having conversations that we would normally have anyway, but maybe making it a lot brighter. I mean, not normally wear a tie, of course. Normally we're completely naked, apart from gimp masks and whips. So yeah, I mean, I would recommend anybody to start doing it. And I think there's a growth in podcasts around the world right now. And I would imagine at some point there's going to be a growth in TV shows like this, as more and more people see it as not just a therapeutic way of, getting things out of their system, but a really smart way of marketing your business at the same time. And that's something that we help people to do. So I think you're going to get a massive growth of podcasts, of TV shows that are self-made from home, because we do this ourselves, and a dirge of the relationship that you have with proper TV networks and proper TV shows, because the generation that's coming through, Generation Alpha, doesn't even know what shows we bother watching, because they wouldn't bother. They know all the YouTubers, all the crazy stuff that happens, and the last thing they want is half an hour of anything that we would want to watch.
Yeah. Well, right now, I mean, it's also very interesting how fast everything changes for them. I mean, when we got started with the pandemic, I think everything was it was actually the end of Fortnite. Then it came, what was it, Gacha, which was the other thing that they're doing. And right now, everybody's absolutely crazy about Among Us.
I know, which if you don't know what Among Us is, it's like a murder mystery game on a spaceship. And you got these little bubble characters and everyone gets to chat with each other. And sometimes you can go in as friends, sometimes you go in as strangers, and you end up trying to work out who's bumping off everybody until you end up with somebody who's an imposter who's trying to kill everybody, and somebody who's like a normal character who's trying to guess who everybody is. And my daughter plays it. She's 10, and sometimes she plays it with rooms full of people who don't speak English. But she just enjoys playing it with people all around the world. It's a fascinating phenomenon.
Yeah, my kids are also crazy about it. And I mean, it is. I think another of those things. Instead of actually trying to see what's going on and fighting and whatever, try to see what Generation Alpha is doing, because it's just absolutely fascinating. And indeed, I mean, the possibilities for them leading to 100, 120, it is very real. But one of the things which is not going to change unless we change, help it change for them, is just the fact that they need to find a purpose. And I think that's just an important thing that we can help them with.
I think that they start off with a purpose. They are far more morally judgmental and morally balanced than we ever were. Right now, we're talking about an election where you've got two complete split sides. And most young people don't get why anybody would get so angry about those issues. They believe that the climate is so important. They believe that food you eat is so important. They believe the conversations you have and the way that they're all linked. Even a game like Among Us, which allows you to play against people from all across the world and have fun together, is the way that they think. They can't believe the issues that we have to deal with. And when I tell my daughter about it, she has her mouth wide open, just going, that's ridiculous. Why don't we just do this? Why don't we just get on? And to them, it's just an absolute shocker that we should have half the issues that we've had. And I really pray that that stuff dies out with us. I mean, let's look at it. The stuff that we hoped that we would differ from our parents and the way that they differ from us. Kids nowadays don't see racism. Kids nowadays want the climate because they realize they want the world to be there when they're here. They embrace technology and they're not scared of it, and they're creating it all the time and growing it. Plus also, they don't eat crappy food. My daughter doesn't eat candy. I had to force her to enjoy eating chocolate. Otherwise, she wouldn't like that as well. She enjoys eating vegetables. What's wrong with her?
Well, tell me how you did it, because I mean, I just cannot get my daughter Nina to eat anything. All she eats, she likes quesadillas for some reason. I mean, I think that's the only thing. That's the Mexican heritage, and of course
the Mexican father.
The Mexican heritage and the Dutch heritage, because it's cheese and tortillas, both of them together. and water. That's basically her food. I mean, she eats pasta once in a while, and she does eat chocolate. But yeah, I can see that because my son Vincent is pretty much into also eating very healthy. And also,
Yeah.
you know what is very interesting? They're also very, I mean, and that is also something that I have seen now. I mean, they're also very much into preparing their own food, and it is very different. So instead of actually just seeing all the BS that people are fighting for, I think we should really start focusing and trying to become the best for our kids, because of course they are the future, and if we're gonna be living to 120, which it'll be awesome if we do, they're gonna be in those cases the leaders.
Yeah, if they keep us around, there's a very good chance they'll end up euthanizing many of us because they just go, you know what, you've had your chance and you ruined it. Let's just start again. They're completely different in the way that they look at it. I mean, you're right, absolutely right. My daughter is into cooking. She's into, I mean, these guys are gonna have jobs in their teenage. I mean, your daughter Nina is an entrepreneur, is making great money, and she's not even in her teens yet.
Yeah.
So we wouldn't do that because we weren't allowed to do that. We were from a generation where we were told when we're allowed to, we can do that. Until then, we can't, and we were never told to do it. The kids now all talk to each other, and they all see what each other's doing, and so they are fearless. They'll do the stuff that they want like a game, and they're very good at it. So I think what we need to do is get our kids up to speed, get them working, and then retire early, if you can call it in our 50s early.
Yeah, that'll be great. And there's also some things that I mean, besides all these things, 75 years, some stuff that it's amazing that's still here with us after 75 years. So you have some examples of some of those crazy things that have survived the test of time, and we really question how come they're still here with us.
I've got a long list of things I thought we'd actually be able to get rid of. Top of the list is Bovril. I've never liked. Have you ever tried Bovril?
I have.
Bovril, I know is huge for Vegemite. I know Aussies love it. Some people love it. I've never understood why, and I'd hope that would have gone by now. But no, and people love it. And I know, don't mean disrespect to Bovril fans. I just don't get it.
Well,
next,
Marmite,
Vegemite.
That's another of those things that I have no clue why does it exist still.
But some people love it, and I get it, and good luck to them with it, but it's not my thing. I'd like to add a couple of things that I think when you change your age, you start to like. So, for instance, I mean, it's an age thing that people will talk about. You know, my parents used to love the Beatles, but their parents used to say, turn that rubbish off. That's no good. And the music I used to love, my parents would say, that's not music. You should listen to the Beatles. The kids now burn through music much faster, and they have a different attitude. But I think when you turn a certain age, you get into things like, I don't know if you got Murray mints or some kind of minty sweet that people like to have and just suck while watching old reruns of old TV shows like Star Trek. I think that's an age thing. Similarly, Metamucil. That's a universal thing. When you find it really hard to drop those logs, Metamucil cleans it all out.
Exactly. For those that need to squeeze a parrot once in a while.
Yeah, that's exactly right. For those of you who need to say goodbye to a long-lost friend. And then you've got the Rocky movies. Now, I don't mean disrespect to Rocky movies. I've loved the Rocky movies, but I'm pretty sure we're going to get more of them. And
are you talking about Rocky Balboa or Rocky and Bullwinkle? Because both of them survived.
Yes, but Rocky and Bullwinkle, I don't think we can bring that into the same conversation as Rocky Balboa, please. I did love the last Rocky movie. In fact, I've loved them all. I just wonder when if they're still going to be around. But having met Sylvester Stallone, and the guy is a genius, and he's brilliant, and he's still a great actor, and he should have got an Oscar for the last movie, Creed. He's still going strong, so good luck to that. Then you got Star Trek. Star Trek won't go away. It just gets reinvented and brought back again. But there's a couple of things that I think we should have got rid of by now. I would have hoped in my lifetime we'd see an end to racism. If anything, we've had it worse. Sexism, if anything, that seems to have got worse. And one other thing, Rudy Giuliani.
Oh, yeah. Rudy Giuliani's also, how is he still there?
Bless him. He's still out there and he's still bonkers. And he's still laying down the law, and good luck to him as well. So there's a number of things
He's a
there.
vampire.
He may be a vampire, but I'm pretty sure that that's his natural look nowadays anyway. He just looks like he's taken a lot of the things that we mentioned earlier, too many of them. That's all. There's one thing that's new, and we won't be displaying any of it unless Ernesto wants to share it. I'm not going to look. I'm not going to look. I'm going to go like this. Ernesto, explain the one thing that's happened recently and I know nothing about.
Granny porn.
I've not watched any, but I'm pretty sure what's on it needs to be ironed out. Right then. So let's look at a couple of things that haven't arrived, or come, as we should say, for a very long time. But we've been waiting all this time for time machines. There are no time machines. You can have time pods where you leave something for future generations to find in your garden. Time capsules are called, but we've not got time machines. Supersonic travel, we had the Concorde. That's gone away. Do you think it's going to come back soon?
No.
Why not?
There's a technological impossibility for that because, you cannot fly supersonic flights above the Earth unless you are at a certain height. So it's actually becoming very, very complicated. So that's one of the reasons why, the Concorde was only flying from Paris and from London to New York and Washington, because it was just crossing the Atlantic. So every time that you have to fly over the land, then that becomes very difficult because you have to be very, very high. And it's just too unpractical, and it's not going to come back.
So instead of getting the supersonic trips, we're going to end up with other things like super hyper speed trains and trains that go underneath the earth and stuff like that. That's going to be an interesting alternative.
Yeah, well, right now, I think it's a magnetic, whatever it is, but I think not so long, there's going to be a Dubai Abu Dhabi train, which I think is going to be 11 minutes or something like that, which is incredible.
Yeah, I think we call it the Pulse. I think it's Elon Musk behind it, but I might be wrong. But yeah, it's going to be incredible when we get that. And these things, when they're made, travel about 700 miles an hour. Can you imagine that?
Yeah, well,
I'd hate to lose my breakfast because I'd have to go back and get it. So yeah, that's not great. Flying cars. Now, here's a thing that's almost around anyway. And our good friend Jeff Smith was talking about going to the opening of a flying car. I thought we'd all be flying in cars like the Jetsons by now. I was hoping it would be true, but we're not that far away using drone technology to actually have our own flying vehicles, a couple of different versions of it being pioneered by Uber and so on. But would you enjoy flying in a car, Ernesto? I think you'd love it, wouldn't you?
I would love it. My only fear is that this is going to be available to idiots. So the amount of idiots in the sky is going to be very dangerous. So I would be very afraid, not of my driving skills, because I am a pilot and I can fly and I know that it's going to be fairly easy. But there's going to be a lot of people which are just going to do a lot of harm instead of actually doing a good thing.
Well, the thing that worries me is, having been the receiving end of walking under pigeons, the idea of walking under planes is even more scary.
My God.
Like you're saying about, like you're saying about the fact that you're worried about the pilots, it only takes one to get it wrong, and suddenly you've got a massive issue on your hands.
Yeah. Well, as they were saying, if you were shot by a pigeon, instead of actually getting upset, you have to be thankful that pigs don't fly. Now you have a possibility.
Wow.
Of taking a crap from one of those cars.
Can you imagine? That's something that you do on a stag night, or maybe not. And then you got jetpacks. Now, the thing is, you can actually get jetpacks that are almost like Iron Man. And why they're not a thing? Well, walking is one of the reasons. The idea of me flying around the world dressed as a superhero, it's just too good to drop. So I take everything back, and I can't believe I said it. Let's change the subject, Ernesto. There's something else that should have been by now. free love.
Yeah.
I know you pay for it, and in a way, we all do. But what I'm just saying is, in the 60s, it was a thing, and now it's just not a thing.
Yeah, it is indeed. Hey, Dave, we're almost running out of time. It's amazing. 75 episodes we have done now.
Oh my goodness.
We mentioned that, we mentioned all these things which have happened 75 years. But I think the most important thing is standing together. And, I was very, very touched by Jon Bon Jovi. He just launched his 2020 album, and the way that he did it was really very nice. He created the video, which we're going to see in a second in YouTube. He created the melody and also the first verse, and then he said, well, you can also contribute to creating the songs. And everything is about standing together. And right now that we're in trying times, we should do whatever we can, even if we cannot do whatever we want. Have a look.
These are trying times we're going through. Uncharted territory, the great unknown. But one thing is for sure, we're going to make it through. Now, I did what I do best, which was to sit down with my guitar and try to put something to words for you, maybe to brighten up your day. Here's my idea. We write this one together. I'm going to give you the chorus. I'm going to give you the first verse. I'm going to play the second verse, but you tell me your story. Tell me what you're going through. Tell me how you're feeling. Tell me if you're hurting. Talk about that high school graduation that's going to be canceled. Talk about that prom you just might not have. Talk about that baby coming that there's nothing you can do about that. Talk about the paycheck that you're losing. Talk about being afraid, looking out your window and wondering what to make of all this. Just remember, we're going to get through it. So sing your song, you and me, together. And remember, when you can't do what you do what you can.
Tonight they're shutting down the borders, and they boarded up the schools. Small towns are rolling up their sidewalks, one last paycheck coming through. I know you're feeling kinda nervous, but all a little bit confused. Nothing's the same, this ain't a game, we gotta make it through. When you can't do what you do what you can. This ain't my prayer, it's just a thought I'm wanting to send. Round here we bend but don't break, down here we all understand. When you can't do what you do what you can. Here's your verse.
I love that. I'm a huge fan of Jon Bon Jovi. I never used to be when it had his poodle haircut, but I saw him live in Abu Dhabi many years ago, and what a star. In fact, I've seen him a couple of times. Incredible artist, really cool and funny and smart guy, and he still looks like the coolest person on the planet. So Jon Bon Jovi, we salute you. You still rock, and even in lockdown, it becomes a rock down with you.
I suggest that you right now here on the description, you'll be able to see the whole video. We could not show it on the show because of copyright issues, but I definitely recommend you to see the whole video because it's very, very beautiful. And yeah, on that note.
Well, it's come to the end. I think we should raise a toast, Ernesto.
Yeah.
To 75 episodes. It's been an utter pleasure doing this with you. I can see that you're drinking some concoction of your own wee. And as for me, I've got Bovril.
I have to get my Metamucil.
I've got Metamucil, Horlicks, and Bovril, all in the same drink. Yum. I'm going to flood like the pipes.
Dave, it's been a pleasure doing 75 episodes. And now we're on our way to 100. Do you think that we're going to end up with the 100 episodes being a companion on the Toilet Paper Diaries?
I think by the time we get to 100 episodes, we'll be on the toilet using paper. in our diaries, but it doesn't matter. We got 25 episodes to go, and I can't wait to enjoy the experience. I wouldn't want it with anybody else apart from not sitting on the toilet with you, Ernesto. Yeah. It's been an honor and a pleasure. You rock. Enjoy your wee. I'll enjoy my Bovril, and we'll see you next time on the Toilet Paper Diaries. Cheers.